This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
We're marching towards Thanksgiving. But before we get there, we're going to wrestle Tim Horner in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then the next day, we're back in Shreveport for TV. And now we're taking on Stagger Lee. Now, this is not the WCW person you remember, Stagger Lee Marshall. This is, in fact, a masked man who physically resembles Junkyard Dog. But this is, of course, a big storyline payoff. It's JYD under a hood. And JYD has been cemented as, if not the one of the top baby faces, one of the most over talents that ever worked with Bill Watts. And you worked with JYD years later in WCW when perhaps he wasn't at his peak run or peak physical condition. But man, JYD in this era, in front of these fans, it was something to see, was it not?
I will go on record and say for that area, that point in time, he was as over as Hogan, Gold, Flair, Rock, Austin. For Louisiana and that territory, Little Rock, Arkansas, Oklahoma, man, he was red hot. And his ring music was Another One Bites the Dust, which they were allowed to, which that music, if you're riding down the road, if you're not even heard of the wrestling business and that song comes on the radio and you cut it up, you're wanting to jump through the roof.
Yeah.
It's just one of those iconic songs. Well, buddy, when it hit and he came through that curtain swinging that chain, that dog chain, man, I never saw anything like it. I had to sit down. Cold chills were running up my spine. I'd never witnessed anything like that. But I also looked at it and I went, man, this is exactly what I signed up for. How do I get in the ring with him? And he had done the angle and he had on the hood. He had apparently had to leave. He had lost a lose or leave town or something, got a screw job. I think we're probably DiBiase at the time or some of those guys, the Rat Pack. So he's wearing a hood and man, it was over. I was, again, starstruck to be in the ring with him.
Yeah, it was a DiBiase feud in '82, and they were, former tag team partners. But of course, DiBiase turns heel and then wins the loser leaves town match. But he used a loaded glove, so he cheated to do it. So he's still hanging around for revenge as Stagger Lee. You mentioned the music. There's been a lot of discussion over the years of who really deserves the credit for popularizing entrance themes and music and tying it into wrestling. And, there was famous videos put together in World Class and in Memphis where I guess it was a little different presentation, but Michael Hayes would sometimes say, oh no, we were the first to do it with the Freebirds. And we came to the ring to, of course, the Leonard Skinner song. And then, as you mentioned, Another One Bites the Dust here for JYD, another really popular one. About 82 here, was everyone using entrance music or was it reserved for special talent?
It was reserved for special talent. And the fact that only a few people had music made it even more special.
That's right.
It wasn't, overdone. And I don't know how they pulled it off, if they were having to pay residuals to the artists.
They didn't pay anybody. You know that.
Oh, well, I was trying to be polite. Not get anybody sued. But I mean, these were popular songs. I remember Jerry Stubbs as Mr. Olympia. His ring music was Let It Whip. Another great song, man. It pulled you out of your chair.
Yeah.
How could you not feel good about that? But I think it was more for top baby faces. Heels really didn't need music unless there was a situation where they had been a baby face. Top baby face had their ring music and now they were switched heel and they were just shoving it up everybody's keister by still playing the music would be the only reason I could think of to do it. Wasn't a positive thing.
Listen, there have been a lot of over talents that you had worked with. We talked about you wrestling DiBiase before, and of course you worked with Mr. Wrestling too, and you worked, in his territory against Bob Armstrong. Boy, he could have been the freaking mayor. But JYD here, Stagger Lee, is this the biggest pop you'd ever seen in wrestling at that point?
Oh yeah. I needed to sit down again. It was one of those deals. I just can't explain it. If you very firmly know they're not screaming for you or at you, or it's not about you, it's about your opponent, you still get swept up in it because you're out there in the middle of it. And everything that you do once the match starts and he is mowing you down, they're popping for him, but they're also popping for you because you're playing a role, you're playing a part of it, and you're the stunt man for the big star, and you get to experience it even though it's not about you at all. It's still, that's the one thing that money can't give you, drugs can't give you, alcohol can't give you. What those fans give you when they react to everything that you do with your maestro stick, when you got your maestro stick out and you're leading that audience and having them react the way you want to, it is the biggest feeling of power. It's the only word I could come up with that I can think of. There's nothing like it. It's magic.
So 2 follow-up questions from what we talked about when we discussed last week's episode that we've nicknamed Pensacola with Pee Wee. Is Pee Wee still with you? Is he still making all these towns, or has he gone back home
now? No, actually, Pee Wee had went back out with me. He's staying with Tim, and right along the time that I was about, let's just say, 3 months in, 2 months left to go, Junkyard Dog, who got to know Pee Wee from being at the shows with me, actually hired him as his assistant.
Wow.
/ driver, because I can't explain to you how long the trips were. 2,500, 3,000 miles was the norm. And JYD was, on the main event every night. He was having to travel those roads by himself. So I think he was paying Pee Wee something like $150 a week. If there was a trip that called for a stayover, Dog would pick up his hotel room, and basically he was just on call. JYD had a Mercedes. Pee Wee was driving a Mercedes around, had $150. He had no bills because he stayed with us for nothing. He had it pretty sweet, and he stayed with Dog for some time. After I left, he stayed out there, and he had forged a spot for himself.
So if you're not riding with Pee Wee, who are you riding with?
Any of the other heels, until we got to the point where I'm about 2 months out, 6 weeks maybe from finishing up. And I got an invite from a unexplained source to ride with him.
We're going to leave that as a tease for next week, a 2-week tease.
Floored me. Floored me. But I was riding, with whoever. The main thing was in those days, you would figure out, okay, when are we on? You're on first, I'm on second. Hell yeah, man, let's get out of there. You would pick guys to ride with. And if it was one of those situations you didn't get along with guys or whatever, and you paid transportation, 4 cents a mile, if you rode with another guy in his car. So there was all kind of little rules, and you paid that trans no matter what. When the trip was over, cash money right there to the guy. Because inadvertently, what I figured out is everybody blew their engines up. Had so many pop tires from traveling on those rotten roads. It was really a bad situation. And everybody's cars, pretty much, you tore up your vehicle working for Bill.
I want to mention, too, I think you told me off air once that you didn't just have a spare tire when you worked for Bill Watts. You had 2.
Yep. Well, those roads haven't, and I've been out there over the years and over the decades, they still haven't been paved. Some of those back roads, and you would have sometimes 200 miles of back roads.
Right.
And they hadn't been paved. And I can't tell you, the potholes, you come around a corner, you never even saw it, because the roads, some of them, it would be a 2-lane road, but there were no lines. I mean, there wasn't a center line and all that stuff. Louisiana is a different place. It's like they make their own rules out there. It's a different country. So I saw that, pretty early on, like the first week. I pulled up, like I think I was parking, and I pulled in, and a couple of guys pulled in beside me in 2 different cars. And I noticed, when they opened their trunk, some of them had an extra spare tire. And I just asked us, why's everybody got 2 spare tires? They went, you'll find out. And hey, when you get between those little towns late at night, when you're making trips, there's no mechanics. You're lucky if you can find a convenience store on some of those little towns on those back roads. So if you pop a tire and you don't have, or you pop 2 tires, let's just say, you don't have a spare, you're screwed. So sometimes it never happened to me. I never had a flat tire, knock on wood, out there, but I was set in case I did.
Let's run through some of the towns that you're making. Shreveport, Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Alexandria, Louisiana, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Little Rock, Arkansas, New Orleans, Louisiana, Houston, Texas. You're all over the place, man. And let's briefly give everybody a peek of what's going to be happening in January of '83. You're going to have a ton of matches, including Bruno Sammartino Jr., Dick Murdoch, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Mike Sharp, Kelly Kaniski, a tag team effort where Tony Torres and Buddy Landell are on the other side. Art Cruz is going to be opposing you as you team with Tom Ernesto Jr. A ton of matches, of course, with your old pal Tim Horner.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.